Barney. Yeah, so I'm going to tie a couple of saltwater flies and just some that I've had, varying success with in the bay over the last kind of lockdown. So I've been fishing the bay. Well, I think I've fished the Frankston Pier 9 out of 9 nights recently. So yeah, I've had quite a lot of success with these flies that I'm going to show you. And the first one, I guess everyone has heard of the Clouser fly, but they might not know the history. They might not know who tied it or what it really looks like. So this is Bob Clouser's original Clouser, and he wrote a book on his flies. So we all call these a Clouser minnow, but it was never really called that. And Clouser's his second name, and I guess we've just we all know this fly as a Clouser. So this is his original, which is tied in really kind of two main parts, which is a tail, and then a wing, and I've tied it in white and chartreuse. So I'll chuck I'll find a hook, and I'll chuck one in the vise, and we'll go from there.
While Ross is getting set up, if you want to put Ross onto a full screen view, if you go to where he is featured, there's 3 little buttons, and you click those buttons and then pin Ross, and he'll come up on full screen.
Oh, well done. Thank you.
I want to put myself on full screen so I can see what I'm doing.
Oh, yourself? You got to pin yourself.
Yeah, that's all right. Cool. So I'm going to put. I'm just going to tie on a size 1 Arex SA220 streamer hook. 1 is quite a large hook, but I reckon it's probably the most versatile saltwater hook for the bay. So perfect for flathead of kind of most sizes. They do have a big mouth, and your larger salmon and snapper as well. The thread I'm going to be using is the Nano Silk. I know most of you guys have heard of Nano Silk. I think the Nano Silk's really important for securing the eyes. I think securing the eyes is the hardest part and the most important part of this fly, especially after you catch a couple of fish. And if those eyes do move, it kind of wrecks your whole fly. So yeah, I really like to secure the eyes well. And Nano Silk's a bit slippery, so to secure it onto the hook, I just use a bit of head cement almost straight away and coat the shank of the hook. And really get a good thread base going on there. And when I tie the eyes in, I'm actually going to leave quite a good gap between the eye of the hook and where I'm going to tie my eyes in. And that allows you to create that wing that actually runs over the top of the eye and out the back of the hook. So I've just got some Tywell dumbbell eyes, and sometimes I think the larger the eye the better, and I reckon these first 2 cross wraps, so I'm actually going to go across the eyes and underneath, and I reckon the first 2 are the most important, and you've got to pull your thread until, and I'm bending the hook as I'm doing this, I'm pulling it as tight as I possibly can to get those first 2 done, and that will give me a really solid base for the rest of the wraps. So now I've done those 2, I can probably do 5 or 6 one way and then 5 or 6 the other way, and that will straighten up those eyes. So they're nicely on top, and being on top, when that hits the water, those eyes will want to sink first, and the hook will sink upside down, and the hook point will be on top, and which helps to create a nice snag-free fly as well. So I'm going to really go overboard, and every wrap I'm doing, I'm using maximum thread tension, to breaking strain to really get these eyes secured really well. And I'm about halfway secure, and I'm just going to put some more head cement on there. Especially in salt water, you get a couple of fish, it can really, disturb these eyes and dislodge them. So you really want to secure them as best as you can, and even take a little bit of extra time. And then I'm going to wrap underneath. I'm going to wrap underneath the eyes in a clockwise turn, just to keep squeeze all those other wraps, those cross wraps together, and just really secure those eyes. And now, as hard as I try, I can't turn those eyes, so I know that they're secure. And that's the hardest part of the fly, I think, that's done. So now I'm going to wind the thread up over the dumbbell eyes and come towards the eye of the hook. And this is how I'm going to tie my tail in. And I'm going to use some white bucktail for the tail. And the section of the bucktail that we want to use is this middle section of the bucktail. You get the best crinkle in the fibers, and you get some of the longest fibers too. You know, there's a whole video you could talk about bucktail, but you know, that's pretty much the simplistic way. And these are tied quite sparse. So only a really small clump. So I'm just separating a really small clump of deer hair off of this tail. I wouldn't know how many strands, but maybe 25, 30 strands, something like that. I think kind of less is more. And a lot of Clousers I see, they tend to be overdressed a little bit. So I've just got a little clump like this, and then I'm going to neaten up the ends and just cut them completely flush. And I'm going to angle this. This is a bit of a tip. I'm going to angle this. I guess if I show you this way, I'm going to angle this towards me at a kind of angle like this across the hook. And as I'm going to do the wraps, it's going to pull it over and straighten it up. And then I'm going to come over the top of the eyes and secure that with a cross wrap. And then I'm going to come down the shank of the hook to where my wraps were to secure that tail. And I'm going to go back up with open spiral. Then I'm going to do that same under the eyes wrap, just to pull it all in nice and tight and neat. And then I'm going to go back over the eyes, and I'm just going to neaten up I guess, the head of the fly by just doing touching wraps and securing all of that deer hair together. And then I guess the first stage, probably 50% of the way through this fly, I've got my wing tied in, and then I've got a rotary vise, so I'm going to turn it around, and then I'm going to add a little bit of flash to this fly. And I really like, I guess with all my saltwater patterns, I like them really flashy. I don't think you can have too much flash. So I've just got some crystal flash in UV pearl. I mean, I've got lots of different colors. I've got it in orange, I've got it in chartreuse, I've got it in black. So you can kind of mix these colors up. There's no hard and fast rule. I just do find that this color seems to be the most productive for me. And I'm going to just take 2 complete strands of crystal flash, and I'm going to fold it in half and into quarters, and then just keep cutting it. So I'll fold it in half, then I'm going to cut it to get the lengths I want, and then I'll fold it in half again. So I've started off with 2, and, you know, I've now got 8 strands. And I'm just going to, for ease of tying, I'm just going to cut them off flush, and I'm going to tie that on to the top of the shank. And I'm not going to tie over the eyes now. I'm just going to tie this front portion of the fly, the head of the fly. And I'm going to secure those in really nicely. So there's my flash, and I've got one here that's just a little bit longer, and I'm just going to cut it off. And then once again, I'm going to use my head cement into where those eyes join and into that flash and everything, and that's just going to make this fly super, super durable. And now for the wing of the fly, I've got the chartreuse bucktail. I've also got this in, I've got orange and pink bucktails as well. So you can really mix and match. Bucktail is super cheap. For a whole tail, it's like 20 bucks, you know, and you can have, you know, lots of different colors, and these tie hundreds of flies. So I'm going to select the tail from that same middle section of this tail, these fibers, and I want exactly the same amount of deer hair as I did with the tail of the fly. I'm just going to cut that off. This chartreuse bucktail is a much better quality and it's much longer fibers than the white. So I'm just going to cut this back just a little bit, make it the same length. And then there's one really long one. I'm just going to pull that long fiber out of that bucktail to make it a bit more uniform. Now I'm going to tie it in the same way as I did with the tail by, holding it about a 45-degree angle over the shank. And then as I'm wrapping over the top and I'm tying it down, it's going to pull the fibers on the top of the shank and be all uniform. And I'm only going to tie on that nose section. I'm not going to wrap around the eyes anymore. I'm just going to tie on the nose. So I'm going to tie this on. Make sure you're using, maximum thread tension as well the whole time. I think that's what really makes a fly next level is your thread tension. And if you can always do every wrap, maybe not these wraps towards the back of the clump because that will flare the deer hair, maybe ease up a little bit, but for everything else, if you can go maximum thread pressure, I really do think that gets you a better fly all round for everything you're doing. And then I'm going to whip finish this fly. And pull really tight. And you need to do a few more with nano silk. Nano silk is quite slippery, and you could definitely do a few more wraps with your whip finish just to secure that. So basically that fly is done, and now we're just going to finish it and make it as robust and last as long as we can. So a fair whack of head cement all around those wraps over the top of the eyes and all over. Is there anyone got any questions or anything about this fly while I wait for that glue to dry?
Yeah, Bernie's got a question. Come on, Bernie.
It's a really cool device, mate. What is it?
That's the Stonefo transformer. So you can actually pull the end off and shake it to dry, and you can comes with three different clamps, I guess, jaws, and it comes with a tube fly attachment as well, so you can tie tubes all on the one vise, and you can loosen the tension so you can spin it as fast as you want, or you can lock it right up hard. And that's definitely a good vise.
Does it have a midge head?
Yes, it does. Comes with the midge head as well, which is here.
Okay.
So really fine jaws.
Right, maybe a present for Christmas.
So now that glue's dry, I'm gonna UV resin, and I like the Golf stuff. I've used Solar Res, Golf, Raise Up, everything else. This stuff just seems to be the best I've found. And I'm gonna put a healthy amount of this stuff on there. So over the top of the eyes, and then coming down onto that nose of the fly, and all the way around the nose, just all of those thread wraps covering them all up and over the top of those eyes. And this really helps to make this a durable fly. And then just to make that glue even itself out, I use my vise and I'll just spin it up. And then I'll hit it with my UV torch. And I'll give it a good blast with the UV. And then I'm going to come back with my head cement and I'm going to coat it like varnish all over the glue that I've just done. Because I have had it when I've caught a flathead before and the teeth or the rasps in the mouth have just pulled that glue off the top, and then it exposes, the threads. And if the teeth get on those threads like, a flathead does or a salmon, they can wear away those threads, and they can cut one of them and that can unravel your thread. So you really want to cover all of those threads with a glue or a UV resin to make sure that, that this fly does, can last a few fish. So I'm just going to cover all of the resin that I just put on and anything that I might have missed just with the head cementing again, just to give it the final coating. And then, yeah, that's it done. So I reckon it's a fairly easy fly to tie. It's a really good bait fish pattern, and yeah, it's caught me a lot of salmon and flathead in the bay over the last kind of 3 months.
Some great little hints in there, Ross, which I'm sure people have picked up. Some little extra things that you do that I think, will maintain the fly for a lot longer life.
Yeah, I definitely think that getting those eyes, those dumbbell eyes secure, that's the real key.
Any questions from anybody?
Yeah, Ross, while you've got that lovely little Clouser in view there, how do you fish it?
It depends what I'm going for. If I'm going for salmon, as soon as it hits the water, I'll strip it back, or yakka or something like that, something that's feeding near the surface or is pelagic. I'd strip it fairly fast, like a fast trout strip, and long strips too. Sometimes with salmon and yakkas, you can't be too fast. If I was going for flathead, I would wait for it to be on the bottom, and I'd still strip it a little bit slower, but still strip it, but just across the bottom on a heavy sinking line. And if I was going for snapper and I had a really big one of these, I would very, very slowly figure eight it across the bottom. So I've caught all of those 3 fish or 4 fish, including the mackerel, on this particular fly in this particular color.
Great.
It's, Ross, is that fishing from a boat or wading or piers or what?
All of those things, yeah. So I've got the fly fisher boat down here in Frankston, so I've been getting that out whenever the weather permits. We've caught, between 3 of us, we've probably caught maybe 60 yakkas in the last kind of 4 days off Frankston Pier on flies. And they're incredible fun, up to 44 centimeters, which is about as big as they get. And salmon as well, the odd salmon. So yeah, I haven't had too much success like wading the beach. I have done a bit of that, but yeah, the pier, definitely getting out a little bit. The pier and the boat definitely seem like the most successful ways to fish.
Okay, thanks.
And I've tied that. Here's my fly box, but I've tied Clousers in all different colors, in pinks and oranges and chartreuse and orange and pinks and orange. But I still find that the white and chartreuse has been the most successful fly, and I guess Bob did too, because that was the one that he liked to tie, the colors he liked to tie in as well. Once this gets wet for the first time as well, you can do a technique called setting the deer hair, where you run it under a warm water tap, and it creates that nice teardrop bait fish pattern. And then as it dries, it actually holds that shape. So it looks kind of, a little bit messy and a bit wild at the moment. But once it gets wet for the first time and then it dries, it sets to that kind of more kind of bait fish pattern like that, I guess. But that's probably, I've got a couple of them here. That's probably the most deadly pattern that I've been tying for our local, the local bay around me anyway. And then I was going to show you guys, any other questions on that fly before I move on to the next one?
And the big head eyes, are they brass, or they lead, or they tungsten?
Tungsten or brass. The problem with lead eyes is if you do hit the corner of your boat or you hit the pier or something, they do tend to break.
Right.
So I'd stay away from lead eyes if you can, and stick with brass or tungsten. Tungsten can break as well. I've had a tungsten one break, but yeah, brass seems to be pretty good. I don't know if it's just a bit softer and doesn't, because they get up to a fair speed on a cast.
Yeah.
And good quality bucktail is another good tip as well, I guess. And then I guess we're happy to move on to the next fly.
Yep. Thanks, Ross.
No worries. So I'll chuck
Ooh.
kind of these in front of the screen. I got some little shrimp, I guess shrimp prawn patterns. And I'll show you how to tie these. These are a bit more complicated. They've got quite a few steps to them, quite a few ingredients in these flies. And I'm going to tie these on quite a large hook, larger than I'd usually tie them, just because I think it's easier for the camera to pick it up. So I'm going to use another Arex hook, the SA250 Shrimp, and I really like the bend in the shrimp hook, and this is in a size 2. So this hook's got a bit of a bend on the shank, and I think it really aids well for putting the eyes and other bits and pieces on.
What size would you normally use, Ross?
4s or 6s.
Okay.
There seems to be a huge difference between a 4 and a 2 in the Arex range. So yeah, but I think if I was going to chase a really big snapper on one of these shrimp patterns, I think I probably would want the 2 or bigger. I've seen these particular flies tied on up to 1/0. I'm actually going to change threads, and I'm going to use a Danville's 210 wax thread, because the more material that I'm trying to bind onto this and the stuff I'm trying to bind on, this wax thread really does help secure everything better, and it's easier. It is easier to use. Definitely could use nano silk. Nothing wrong with, if you wanted to still use the nano silk, you could. Just going to load this up in my bobbin now.
Ross, with the Clouser, are you using a sink tip line, or are you letting the fly do the sinking, or both?
Full sink line.
Full sink as well.
Yeah, so if I'm going for salmon, like the last kind of 6 days that I've fished the pier, I've used an intermediate line on a 6-weight rod for the yakkers and the salmon. Off the pier, they don't particularly get that big, and a 6-weight is probably borderline of kind of, you know, you're using the minimum that you can get away with. And then if I'm out in the boat, I'm using like a sink 6+ line, and yeah, fishing, you know, as close to the bottom as possible. When you're fishing in kind of 4 to 8 meters of water, yeah, you can almost, you know, you could almost have like a sink 10 line.
All right.
So I've chucked my hook in the vise, and I've started the thread up, and I'm going to leave a little gap, not quite as big a gap as I did with the Clouser, but I'm going to chuck on a tungsten, wherever I put them, they were just here. I'm going to chuck on a tungsten eye. So it's a bit smaller too. The eye is purely there to sink the fly. It's not there for looks. So yeah, and I guess if you are fishing in 8 meters of water, you could definitely cover this shank in lots of lead too, lead wire. But yeah, I'm doing the same method, so a few cross wraps, and then going under the eye and over the shank just to secure that. But this is kind of at the back of the hook. It doesn't really need to be secure. If you lose the eyes, it's not going to reflect the fly. But then we'll just chuck a little bit of head cement on them. But it isn't as critical with this fly as it is with the Clouser to get these eyes secure. And then I'm going to come up to kind of where the bend starts going down. So the bend's going up and then it's coming down, and I'm going to wrap my thread up to the highest point in that bend. And then I'm going to tie in, we were talking about this at work, what do you call this bit? And we kind of said we're going to call it a beard. So I'm going to tie the beard, the mouth of the prawn, I guess. And I like this streamer hair in fine from Tywell, but you could use Arctic Fox, you could use Marabou if you wanted a natural option. And this stuff is the same as EP fiber or near fiber or or any of that. And instead of going sparse with this stuff, I like to go probably use 4 times more than what you think you need. So I'm just going to grab a bit of a clump like this, and I'm going to cut off 1/2 inch of it. So I've just got a little bit, and I'm going to taper it at both ends. And then I'm going to fold it in half to double it up. So I've got quite a lot of material there, and that is what's going to go on as the beard of the fly. So I'm going to tie that in on the top of the hook, and I'm going to tie it in quite well. And I'm just going to cut. I don't want the bulk under the wraps. So this stuff at the back, I'm just going to trim that off. So I've just left with a tiny little bit of fluff sticking out the top, and that doesn't look like a lot, and I always put way more than I think I need, and by the time you tie it in, it looks very sparse. So yeah, a little tip there is kind of use 4 times more than what you think you need. And then I'm going to turn my hook upside down, and I'm going to tie in my eyes. Where did I put my eyes? Quickest, easiest way for crab and shrimp eyes are these plastic ones from Stonefo. All the hard work's done for you. Mono eyes look great, but they take a long time to make them yourselves, or they're expensive to buy. So I'm just going to find the biggest ones because I'm tying on a big hook. They come in 2 different sizes. So you've got small eyes and big eyes, and I'm just going to pop the big eyes out of the pack. And they come at like a really nice distance apart. I don't know if you can see that. And I'm going to put that on the top of the hook, on the bottom of the hook, I guess, because I've got the hook upside down. And I'm going to tie that in just to the V of the eyes. I'm going to wrap that in really hard. And I think this is where the wax thread helps grip that plastic and help secure that in. So I've got my beard and I've got my eyes in there so far, and I'm just going to put a little bit of head cement over those wraps there just to help secure those 2 materials in place. Now, for the next part of the fly, I'm going to tie the antenna in, and I'm going to use black crystal flash, which is here. So I just got some crystal flash in black, and I'm going to use 1 whole strand of this cut into 4 pieces, and I'm going to use it cut at that full length. So these are going to be really long, and if you've ever seen a prawn in the water, they do have these like ultra long you know, antennas, tentacles that I don't know the proper name for them. I don't know if anyone does, that stick out the top. So I'm just going to fold that in half, and then fold that in half again, and I'm measuring it as accurately as I can. And then I'm going to tie these in at a 45-degree angle facing up. So you want these up. So this is going to be the bottom of the shrimp. The hook's going to be up, and you want these tentacle parts of these antenna parts of the prawn pointing up. So I'm going to just turn my vise side on, and I'm going to hold the crystal flash at a 45-degree angle up, and I'm just going to tie them in so they'll point in an upwards direction. So when I put that back, they are kind of orientating up. And I'm going to do the same on this side. So we'll have 4 in total. And again, at that 45-degree angle up. So yeah, this side on here is actually, I've done a much better job at angling that up. I don't know if you can see the black crystal flash, but yeah, that's done a much better job of angling up. And then I'm going to put some rubber legs in, and I've got a few different colors here. I've got like a tan, speckled. I've got this kind of white and black barred, and then I've got some pink ones as well. So you can use any color you like. I'm going to use the tanned ones, and again, I like to chop these into 4 pieces, so in half and then in half again, so into quarters, and I'll use them at that full length. So really low waste on this fly. You're not, using, you don't have bits left over. I've just cut one whole rubber leg off the stack of them, and I'm going to use all of it. Same with that crystal flash. And then I'm going to angle these at the 45-degree angle down. So I've got the tentacles going up and I've got the legs going down. Tie that side in. And then I'll tie this side in. And I'm just going to really wrap that all up and try and smoothen that body out as best I can. We just got a lot of materials all bulked up in that one spot. And then I'm just going to head cement it all again. So that's the most complicated part of that fly. So all of the tricky stuff is done now. It's not hard. It's not a tricky fly to tie, but it's there's a lot of steps. Any questions so far?
Roscoe, what's the head cement you're using? Sally's or?
Oh, I just Rimmel London 60-second. But the Loon Hardhead is very, very similar. I've used that before. So yeah, I like this stuff. I've gone through a few bottles of it, and it seems to do the job. But you could use super glue. You could use a thin UV resin as well. But yeah, that stuff just seems to sink in, and yeah, when works quite nicely.
Cheers.
So now we're going to get on to the dubbing process of this fly. And I think that the secret of this fly is the dubbing I use. I use BMS blend, and I actually do a hot spot on this fly. So where's mine? I'll use a mixture of the BMS in tan and in the hot orange. So most of the body is going to be tied with the tan, and then I'm going to put an orange hotspot in the middle. So in between my last wrap here and then where the where I've put those tungsten eyes in, that will be the last dubbing. So with BMS, you can use quite a lot of it. You can you feel like you're using too much, but it's quite sparse, and it does look quite hollow in the water. So I'm just gonna, it kind of looks messy, and it kind of is messy, and it's hard to dub with, but you get such an awesome effect with it. Obviously Muzz has tied some really deadly flies with BMS in the past. So now I've done that front bit, I'm now going to do my orange hotspot. I'm just going to use a little bit, probably half what I used for that one. Wax will definitely help you dub this stuff on. And then I'm just going to finish the tail of this fly with a little bit more of the tan. I'm going to come up and finish right behind those tungsten eyes. So I've got this little tool from Stonefo. So one end is a dubbing teaser and the other end is a brush. So I'm going to grab the dubbing teaser and I'm going to go and tease all this dubbing out. I'm going to go front, backwards, side to side, and make this really woolly. And now I'm going to pull all of that BMS dubbing back over the fly towards the eyes. And that gives you a really nice case, I guess. So that part of that fly is done. And then I'm going to come over the top of the eyes. And I'm going to tie an overwing over the top of this to it acts as a little bit of a weed guard, but it's more just to finish the fly off and give it a bit of an overwing. There's lots of materials that you could use. You could use just EP. And going back onto how I've dubbed this, you could use an EP shrimp brush to create that dubbing effect and then brush the brush back. But I do think BMS gives this fly a bit of a different edge. And I think a lot of people are tying with BMS, especially patterns like this. So I like, where have I put it? This laser dub in tan from hairline dubbing. And I'm going to actually turn it into a bit of a wing material. So I'm going to grab a fair bit of it. And then I'm not going to dub this. I'm going to rip it apart and stack it on top of each other. And I'm going to use it to create like a fiber. So it's quite long fibers, this laser dub, and it's got a really nice sparkle to it and a UV. And I'm just going to keep ripping it and stacking it to create like, you know, kind of like an EP fiber, I guess. And I'm going to grab that brush again, and I'm just going to comb it through just to make sure all of those hairs are aligned and I get rid of any fibers you don't want. And then I'm going to measure it out so it goes just over the hook point, tie it in. And then with this thing I've got at the back, I'm going to fold that over and I'm going to tie that in so it's all facing in the right direction. And then I'm going to whip finish. And then I'm going to grab my comb again, and I'm going to comb all this up. And I'm going to fold it back over the hook. So you're left with something that looks like that. So you've got a bit of an overwing. And then obviously you've got your eyes and your antennas and everything else and legs in there. Now I can head cement this around those eyes, around those tungsten dumbbells anyway. And then that fly is done. And there's 100 different materials and different colors you can tie this in, but this is the color variation. No one's told me this, I haven't seen this. This is just something that I've been messing around with. And last weekend, this fly caught me 5 snapper. So yeah, this color variation, I think that orange hotspot in the middle there and the BMS dub, I think that, you know, just, it is a bit of a trigger for the fish. But yeah, it is a bit of a complicated fly, I guess. But there, you know, it is rewarding to tie, and I think the results speak for itself.
Any questions for Ross?
Yeah, Ross, that's a really cool fly. Well done. Lovely use of materials and stuff like that. That hot spot is some people think it represents the eggs in a shrimp too, in a female shrimp. Yeah,
no, I have seen hot spots in shrimps before, with different colors and pinks and stuff. And yeah, it could, you know, recreate eggs or something like that. But yeah, I think that yeah, it does act as a good trigger. And I like that I've got the orange beard and the hotspot both as orange. They're different materials, but the color's pretty similar. And I think that does they complement each other.
Ross, it has eyes at both ends. Is that right?
Well, it has tungsten eyes at the back, but they're very small tungsten eyes, and they're not. You can't really see them when you've got all the materials back there. So it's got, I guess, plastic shrimp eyes at the front, and then the tungsten dumbbell is really just the weight to get the fly to sit right on the bottom of the water. It's not acting as an eye. It's not meant to be an eye. It's more just purely for function, not for aesthetics.
Okay,
and Ross, how would you fish it?
Very slow figure of 8 retrieve on the bottom. I have left it dead on the bottom, and fish do pick it up, but they don't seem to they seem to be a bit more wary of it. It does need a little bit of movement. It's super slow figure of 8 across the bottom. If you strip it too fast, they won't take it either. But I have noticed that salmon won't eat it. I haven't had a salmon eat one yet. So if you are trying to target snapper in a big school of fish, then it does get past the salmon to get below one.
What's the commonest size you'd use in the bay?
1s, 4s, and 6s, I guess, a mixture of those. So if you're going for smaller salmon, you could go down to a 6, but I'd say probably use a 4 for most things. And then, yeah, go to a 2 if I'm chasing something bigger. But a lot of people, I like my hooks a bit smaller. I reckon the smaller the hook, the smaller the gauge of the wire, I think you can get a better hookup. It does just seem to pierce through the skin of the fish better if it's a thinner diameter. But like a lot of guys, you know, they only like 1/0s and 1s and stuff like that, which, yeah, I tend to not use that much.
Anyone else got a question at all?
And are you using J hooks, or have you tried circle hooks, or does it matter?
I've used some of those Arex curved saltwater hooks, and I've had good results on them. But this, I think that the beauty of this fly is tied on that shrimp hook. The way that the shrimp sits in the water, because you've got that bend in the shank, you get a really nice angle between those dumbbell eyes and the bottom of the hook, and it sits on the bottom really nicely and maybe looks a bit more natural.
Okay. Are you getting corrosion on the hooks, or like, are you getting one trip per set of flies, or?
No, I am only tying on saltwater hooks, and I haven't had any corrosion at all, nothing to speak of whatsoever. I am giving them a bit of a rinse as well. So with those, like, I use a Scientific Angler's boat box, and on the back of the boat box on the outside, it's got foam on the outside of the box. So obviously you grab your fly from the inside, you fish it, and I'll put it back on the outside, the foam on the outside. Then when I get home, I'll rinse them all off, dry them out, and then I'll chuck them back in the box. And that's, I haven't had a hook rust on me, but these are all proper saltwater hooks from Arex as well.
Now, Ross, there's a lot of material where the gape is. You just wonder whether it, I know it would stream back, but you just wonder whether it would you know, penalise the take a little bit at times.
All these materials are very soft, and you can see there that you know, I can just push with my boardkin, and I push it down. They definitely will act as maybe a bit of a weed guard for sure, but I don't think it's a fish guard. I don't think so. I think if a fish is going to properly take it and is going to commit to taking it, I think they are going to find that hook. They are going to push those materials out the way, and they are going to find it.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Ross, one of the things that I've used, because I've done a fair bit of saltwater fishing, the polyester, or poly we used to call it.
Poly yarn, yeah.
The poly yarn, in the water, it does create, it's a much softer than a deer's hair.
Yep.
And by interspersing the poly with the deer's hair, especially on a slow retrieve, it does give the fly more life. So if you're fishing for tailing trevally or something like that in salt flats, or I've also used it in Malakuta for catching flathead, having probably equal amount of poly with the deer's hair does give the fly a lot more life, especially in a slow retrieve. So you can have like a slow, almost jerking retrieve, and it does tend to pulse in the water. And I've had good success with that. Interesting, because I haven't done a lot of saltwater fishing down in Victoria.
Is that with the Clouser you're talking about?
Yeah, mainly Clouser and minnows.
Yeah, cool. Well, I've obviously EP fiber is poly yarn, and I have tied a few what they call the EP baitfish and EP minnow pattern, and that's just a pure poly yarn fly as well, and I think that's probably a very effective fly as well. So
right. I didn't know what EP was, so there you go.
Yeah, EP fiber. Well, it's Enrique Puglisi. That's the guy's name, but it is basically a type of poly yarn.
Right.
But obviously, you know, you can buy it in a big clump like this, opposed to buying poly yarn in a small packet like this. So
Yeah, that's how we used to buy it almost like a cloth, you know, like a strip of cloth that was 10 inches long or something. And the fibers on it are a good long length. And you just cut them off.
Yeah, this comes as a big long thing as
it's
well.
a bit different.
I think a good tip with using this stuff and EP fiber is the comb. You need to keep this, it gets matted, and to give it that nice look, you need the comb, and also take a comb with your fishing.
All right.
Oh, what have I got here? I don't think I've got a...
And Ross, are these like what are the flies like around weed? Like, you put weed guards on them, or do they one like fight the weed due to there's a bit of coverage already?
Yeah, I think that overwing, or whatever you want to call it, on the top of that shrimp that I've used, I think that does act as a bit of a weed guard. I don't put weed guards on these. You definitely could if you wanted to, and I've never put weed guards on a Clouser, and I've never seen anyone ever use weed guards on a Clouser. And I think the main reason for that is the hook does ride up. Because you've got those eyes, the hook does ride up. So it's naturally a more weedless fly, just purely because you've got the hook up and not down on the bottom.
I was going to ask the same thing about weed guards, because I know barrow fishing, when we were barrow fishing, we used weed guards on the flies because you actually want to put the fly where the snags are. But if you're fishing on the bottom, do you not, without weed guards, get snagged up a bit more?
Well, I think the bay is very featureless, and also, you know, cod fishing, 100%. You know, you want weed guards because you're fishing in a lake. There's lots of timber. Same with barra. You're casting into mangroves in shallow water. But if you're fishing in salt water on sand, and you're fishing for flathead on sand, and you've got a hook point that rides up, yeah, you probably are going to get snagged on something, but it's a lot less likely, purely just because of the environment that you're fishing in.
And is there a case for maybe putting weed guards on trout flies where you're fishing somewhere like Tolondo, where, you know, you might get the fish around the sort of stumps and things?
100%. If you're fishing like a big articulated streamer, I mean, me and Peter have found out that a trout will take a 6-0 hook. So if you're going to fish, you know, big articulated streamers or big streamers for trout, 100%, I don't see why you wouldn't, you know, you couldn't chuck a weed guard on there.
Right. That's the poly that I was talking about. So it's like a fabric.
Yep.
Pull up the camera back.
That's what we use. You know, we've always used that. Yeah.
Put it up at the camera, Barry.
A bit more, Barry.
Put it up further. Beautiful.
Oh yeah, it's
perfect.
craft fur.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, very effective.
Yeah,
and you get
it
white. Mainly, I use white.
So what I've done with the overwing on this, you could definitely substitute this Senyo's laser dub for craft fur, and the same with the beard, the orange beard that I've used with EP. You could definitely substitute that with craft fur.
Yeah, because this stuff in the water, you know, when you pull it, when especially not where you're doing a faster strip, but where you're doing a slower strip, and you can keep pausing it, it does give it a lot of life.
Yeah, for sure. And if you wanted to use a natural product, Arctic Fox, I got some of this stuff here. I think this stuff probably has got the most unrivaled movement in the water.
Right.
And yeah, I think, you know, so and the same again, if you wanted this overwing in a natural, not a synthetic, you could use an Arctic Fox in a tan color. It comes in, you know, I've got it in orange as well, so you could use Arctic Fox for the beard, and you could also use marabou as well. And I think, yeah, some of these natural products like Arctic Fox and marabou have just as much movement in the water as a poly yarn or a craft fur.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, there's definitely no hard and fast rule when it comes to tying this fly. So what I've used this laser dub for the overwing, you could use this on the body and then put your craft fur or your Arctic Fox as the overwing. And the same with the beard. I think the only real thing that's got to be the same, I think the black crystal flash for the antennas, the eyes, and the rubber legs. I mean, you could change the color of the rubber legs, but I think they're the three main key ingredients to that fly that you can't really change. But everything else you could experiment with different colors and different materials for sure.
Right.
And
Thank you.
EP, this is an EP brush. This is their shrimp brush. And you could use this instead of the dubbing. So you could wrap your brush around the shank of the hook, brush all the fibers back, and you get a very, very similar effect. And this is something already, you buy this in the store already done for you. And you know, it's like an instant body.
Yeah.
Any more questions for Ross at all?
You don't have a club special on the Vice, do you?
A special? They've actually, no, you can't, yeah, they're difficult to get. So unfortunately with everything these days, you know, things are going up, not down.
Yeah, no.
So what's the largest and the smallest size hooks you can use with those different heads?
For this fly or for the Clouser or for both?
No, with the vice.
With the Vice.
Vice, the different head.
Everything.
Sorry.
Yeah, everything. So it also comes with a midge jaws. So you could tie right down to like a 26 or a 30 because it's got this tiny little end on it. And then it comes with their streamer jaws, and then it comes with a tube fly tool. So if you want to change jaws, it's as quickly as you pull that out, you put that in, done. And then you're tying on your midge jaws. And then if you want to tie tube flies, you pull that out, you put this in, and then you put your tube on the end there too.
Yeah, Steve, there's a Christmas present for Mary Ann.
Yeah.
Look, I've inherited.
I thought I'd help you out there, Mary Ann. I know you were hinting.
What's the name of my
Oh,
See, I had the dino one in there, so I can't remember. I'm happy with my vice. I've had so many vices over the years, but I'm happy.
We've all got vices, Mary Ann.
He can have my old vice.
Yeah.
But that looks a nice vice.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it is. And it's got a toolbar built into the back here. I'll kind of hold it up. So you can have all your tools all on the back here.
And is it just a single lever that you attach the hook? You don't need to
Yeah,
adjust
here.
screws
Yeah,
and-
single lever.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
Now, Bernie, be careful. You don't need it. You don't need it.
I've already got a Pete Vice that I bought a midge head for, and I'm like, I do charge tube flies. I've already looked at it online.
Look.
So
Okay.
I must admit though, without like, you know, trying to put a hard sell or anything on anyone, a fly like this where you're tying, you know, the eyes on that way, then you're tying the antennas on, a true rotary vice really does make this fly easier to tie. But yeah, that's super secure in there, and then yeah, you just flick the lever and it comes out with very little effort. Where the last vice I had, you know, I used to have to really wrench hard on it to get the hook to sit in there. But I would say that this vice has improved my tying.
Do you find you use the rotary function more when you're tying salt flies than trout flies?
I don't know. I don't know if I could say that. I use it for everything. I use it to look, you know, a trout's going to see under the fly if it's a dry fly. So I'll always turn it over and have a look underneath and see what the trout sees.
Any further questions, or we'll stop the recording?
No, anyone else? That's Ross. Thank you very much for tonight.
No, that's all right.
A classic fly with the Clouser, and I think it's sort of I'll call it the Roscoe shrimp. It looks fantastic, and it's a proven snapper catcher. And to catch a snapper in the bay on fly would be a bit of a goal for some people, I would imagine. So it's nice.
Yeah.
Got 'em.
No, it's been a bit of a goal for me, and I guess you know, not having the fly fisher boat for that long, I've been taking it out whenever the opportunity arises, and I've been going pretty hard to try and get one.
It's like anything hard, doesn't come easy, but when a plan comes together, it's really successful and satisfying. So you're well done with that.
No, well, I kind of found myself